She was a ghost forged in the crucible of 3 wars, a woman whose name was whispered in hushed tones across battlefields. Her story wasn't just written in military records. It was etched onto the rough-hewn tables of dive bars where she'd worked as a bouncer, and in the late-night reports she filed as a police officer. She was a phantom, moving through the world with a quiet intensity that few could understand. But beneath the hardened exterior, the calloused hands, and the watchful eyes, beat the heart of a kind soul. A secret heart known to only one man, her husband. He was her anchor in a world of chaos, the calm in her personal storm. They had met under the sprawling, unforgiving sky of a foreign war zone. He saw past the uniform, past the reputation, and saw her. He was the one person who knew her deepest secret, a truth so staggering it seemed torn from the pages of a fantasy novel. She, the battle-hardened soldier, was the last living heir to the Spanish throne. They would laugh about it in the dead of night, imagining a life of palaces and crowns, a life so far removed from the dust and danger that surrounded them. It was their private joke, their shared dream for a future that felt both impossible and inevitable. But war is a thief. It steals futures without apology. One day, the world simply stopped. A single bullet, fired in the heat of a skirmish, found its mark. Her anchor was gone. The news shattered her, leaving a void so vast and cold it threatened to consume her whole. The laughter died, the dreams turned to ash. Heartbroken and utterly lost, she returned from the war a different person. The ghost she was on the battlefield had followed her home, haunting her every step. To escape the memories, she threw herself back into the only other life she knew, the police force. She sought the familiar structure, the sense of purpose, the distraction. She traded her military fatigues for a police uniform, hoping the blue would feel different from the camouflage, but the ghosts remained. She was paired with a new partner, a charismatic and sharp-witted officer named Alex. He was everything she wasn't: outgoing, optimistic, and seemingly untouched by the world's darkness. He saw her pain, the walls she built around herself, and instead of backing away, he tried to breach them with jokes and coffee. At first, she resented his attempts to get close. His easy smile felt like an insult to her grief. They clashed on patrol, their methods worlds apart. She was methodical, cautious, seeing threats in every shadow. Alex was intuitive, a risk-taker who trusted his gut. Their arguments were legendary at the precinct, battles of will that often left their colleagues walking on eggshells. Yet, despite the friction, they were good at their job. An undeniable chemistry, a strange and effective rhythm, began to form between them. In the heat of a chase or the tension of a standoff, they moved as one. Slowly, reluctantly, her walls began to crumble. Alex's persistence was wearing her down. She found herself smiling at his terrible jokes, looking forward to their shared shifts. He spoke of his own past, not of war, but of personal loss that resonated with her own. He never pushed her to talk about her husband, but he created a safe space where she felt she could. One evening, over lukewarm coffee in their patrol car, she finally told him. She spoke of the men she loved, the laughter they shared, and the bullet that stole him away. Alex listened, his usual playful demeanor gone, replaced by a quiet empathy that soothed a part of her soul she thought was dead. A new feeling began to stir within her, something she hadn't felt since before the war. It was confusing and terrifying. How could she feel this way for someone else? It felt like a betrayal. She tried to push him away again, becoming cold and distant, but Alex didn't retreat. He just waited, giving her the space she needed, his quiet support a constant presence. The battle within her was more fierce than any she had faced on the field. Her grief for her husband and this budding affection for her partner were at war. One rainy afternoon, they were sorting through old case files from the cold case unit, a mundane task to pass the time. She picked up a thick folder, its label faded. The case was about an internal investigation concerning a friendly fire incident from years ago. A military operation. Her blood ran cold. As she read the details, the dates, the location, the world began to tilt on its axis. It was the same operation, the same day, her husband's death. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. The report was heavily redacted, but one name was clear on the witness list: Officer Alex Rudder, her Alex. He had been there. He was part of a special task force attached to her husband's unit. The official story was that her husband was killed by enemy fire during a chaotic ambush. But the file told a different story. It hinted at inconsistencies, a cover-up. There was a supplementary report buried deep within the file that spoke of a panicked shot fired by an Allied operative. She confronted him right there, in the silence of the records room, the file thrown onto the table between them. She watched his face, the way his smile vanished, the way the light left his eyes. The truth came tumbling out, a torrent of regret and guilt he had carried for years. It was an ambush, just like the official report said. Chaos erupted. In the confusion, the smoke, and the shouting, Alex had fired. He thought he saw a threat, a glint of metal, but it wasn't the enemy. It was her husband. The pain was blinding. It was a physical force, knocking the air from her lungs. The man who had been slowly healing her heart was the very person who had broken it. The kind soul within her was consumed by a rage so pure and hot it burned away everything else. The soldier took over. In her mind, Alex was no longer her partner, no longer the man she was falling for. He was the enemy. He was the target. Her training kicked in. She saw weaknesses, attack vectors. Her hand twitched, instinctively moving towards her service weapon. She wanted to make him pay, to inflict the same pain he had inflicted upon her. The precinct, the uniform, the lot all faded away. There was only the predator and the prey. She lunged, not with a weapon, but with the raw fury of a wounded animal. They fought, a desperate, clumsy battle among the shelves of forgotten crimes. It wasn't a police officer fighting another. It was a widow fighting the killer of her husband. He didn't fight back, not really. He absorbed her blows, his arms raised only to defend himself. And through her red-tinged vision of rage, she saw the tears streaming down his face. She saw the profound self-loathing in his eyes, a mirror of the grief she had carried for so long. He wasn't a monster. He was a man haunted by a terrible mistake, who had tried to find redemption by helping the very person he had wronged, never knowing who she was until it was too late. Her fists slowed. Her breath came in ragged sobs. She collapsed, the fight draining out of her, leaving only the hollow ache of grief. He didn't run. He stayed, kneeling in front of her, his own heart shattered. In that moment of shared agony, something broke. The hate, the rage, it cracked. And through that crack, a sliver of impossible light shone through. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the man who killed her husband, but the man who had been trying to save her from the wreckage. It was a love born from the deepest tragedy, a bond forged in the fires of shared pain. It was unthinkable, illogical, and yet it was real. Forgiving him felt like an impossible mountain to climb, but the thought of losing him, of pushing away the one person who truly understood the depth of her sorrow, was even more unbearable. The soldier, the bouncer, the cop, the secret heir to a throne, all of those identities fell away. She was just a woman, faced with an impossible choice between the ghost of a love she had lost and the tangible presence of a love she had found. And in the quiet devastation of the records room, she realized her war was not over. It had just begun. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories.